4 gears. How I went on my date in the car with this girl. It was fake wood, but 6B9s could be doing on the motorway and the engine would cut out. It sounded absolutely nuts. So we scrapped it. The car crashed itself. As Jeremy Clarkson says, you're not a true petrol head until you've owned an Alfa. Hello everyone, Andy here, hope you're well. And this is my first video to welcome you into 2022, so I wanted to do something a little bit more special, not just something sort of generic on the car. But before I get started, I do think this could well be a long video, so go and get yourself a drink beforehand and then come back. So what I wanted to do was something a little bit more special to bring in the new year and doing something personal to me, not on this car. So I've wanted to I've wanted to do this for quite a while, and it's like a history of all the cars that I've owned. So I will try and go through this list as quickly as possible, but to make it obviously a little bit more interesting, I'm not just going to give names. There's going to be loads of pictures cropping up and sort of stories behind them all and information as well on the car specs. So to start off, the first car I didn't actually buy or own. My parents, I think, helped to buy this between me and my brother. We had a Citroen AX. It was a 1996. It was not even a 1 litre engine. It was like a 900 something cc's. It had 4 gears. It weighed nothing. I had a look. It was a 50 horsepower car, which just sounds so small. But you know what? From what I remember, it was really nippy, but I think it was just one of those because, you know, it weighed nothing, that it was really quick to get to like 30 miles an hour. Then after that, it had no grunt whatsoever, and it only had 4 gears. How many of you out there have driven a car with 4 gears? I bet a lot of my viewers on here are probably younger than me, but I loved it. It was a Dimension edition. It was in this colour called Amazon Green. What I loved about it was the door handles at the side didn't have any. It just had these little switches that were hidden, and I just like more aerodynamic. That was really cool. I loved the little kind of mid spoiler below the rear window. That was just a nice touch. The rear wheels were slightly sort of sunk behind like a lower arch line. Again, really loved that design. But one little funny story to tell you before I get to the next car is I actually went on a date in this car, and I remember at the time the speakers in the car had stopped working, and what I did was I couldn't be bothered to obviously spend money on getting any fancy new, you know, speakers and radio put in the car to work. I had a CD Walkman that I put in the glove box, and I bought some two 4-watt plug-in speakers that I blue tacked to the dashboard, and I basically played my music. I put like a CD on in the glove box and pressed play. And that's how I went on my date in the car with this girl, was listening to music via the glove box on these really crappy little 2 speakers blue tacked to the dashboard. So that was quite a fond memory of that car. Moving on to the next car. Now, this was like a big step up. I was at uni now, and we then me and my brother again, so I didn't just own and buy this car. It was an S-Reg, which I think was 1998. It was a Rover 200. It was a 1.4 and 8 valve. So they did come in 16 valves, but I only got it in an 8 valve. I'll say I only got it, me and my brother shared it. It was an 8 valve, it was 100 horsepower. So we've gone from a less than a 1 litre to a 1.4, only 8 valve, but it had 100 horsepower. So you can imagine at the time, I was thinking like, God, this car's fast. And I had a look, and it was 10.2 seconds to 60, which wasn't that bad for back then. You know, like the previous car was 13.5 seconds. A lot of other little cheap runaround cars were pretty slow. So to have a car that would do not 10 seconds was actually quite fast. And it was a really nice car. I've only actually got one picture, I'm sorry to say, that I'm going to keep up on screen next to me. But I absolutely love this car. Maybe if I've got some Google images, I might actually pop it up, because I remember the interior had this wood. Obviously, it was fake wood. But I remember when my friends came in, they were all like, God, this is well posh, isn't it? It's like, how is this your car? Like, you know, to have a Rover at the time, you know, which was over 20 years ago now. And back then, they were still kind of, you know, going, and you had the MGs. And I remember thinking, I'd love the MG version of this car. But anyway, love that car. So the third car that I didn't own, again, it was shared with my brother, was a Mark V Fiesta 1.3. It was really slow. It was 16 seconds to 60. So really slow, the slowest car I've ever owned. But it was actually quite a nice car. It didn't look as good because it was in a 5-door, but at the time I actually quite liked it. It had the more aggressive sort of lights at the front, not the horrible oval weird ones that they had on the previous version. It was really basic. I think it still had a cassette player, no aircon, wind-up windows. It was proper back to basics. But I did really like the car. It's sort of what got me into Fiestas, I suppose, because it was a really fun car to drive. Even with the lack of power, it was the handling that gave it its characteristics, and yeah, I loved it. So then the car I actually fully bought myself. This was after uni. I'd finished uni. I paid off my loan. Well, I hadn't paid actually all my loan off, but I'd saved up loads of money from working like a part-time job, and I got myself my Corsa C SRI 1.4. 88 horsepower. It was black. I think it was called sapphire black. It was just a flat black colour, no metallic, and that was just over 10 seconds to 60 as well. That was a 2000 reg. It was an X reg. But yeah, I remember at the time I just thought that was the bee's knees. I was loving it. It was black. It was an SRI edition, which it had on the sides. It had nice alloy wheels. It had aircon. It had a CD player, electric windows. It had white sort of sports dials. And I just thought it was so cool. I did a few things. This is when I got into modding. This was the first time I got into modding. I remember I put a Pipercross air filter on it. I put an Irmscher twin oval exhaust back box on it, which was so loud for the car, even though it was like really fairly slow. It sounded awesome. I put 6B9s. Yeah, I got into the world of 6B9s. I had these Kenwoods. They were really powerful, actually. I had no extra amp in the car, but the sound that came from them was just immense. I absolutely loved the noise that car made, and the music with those 6B9s in the back was so, so good. I did a few of the little things, like I put some door sills in, but you know, that was kind of it really. But to me, that was quite a lot. You know, that's what got me into modding. I was like, ooh, you know, I can feel a bit more power. I loved the noise, the sporty, loud, obnoxious noise. Sound system was good. So yeah, loved that car. But it was a Vauxhall and it had quite a lot of problems. Engine kept cutting out. I had problems with the lambda sensor. I would be driving along, and a few times a year, I remember the year I only had it a little bit over a year, that car, I would literally be driving, I could be doing on the motorway, and the engine would cut out. It was so dangerous. The power steering would fail, everything, so I had to turn it off, and I used to have to pump the accelerator and get it starting again. It was scary, so I had to get rid of it. I was just like, you know what, I'm getting something else. But at the time, I was in my first job after uni. I'd saved up money, and I remember watching Top Gear. And if you remember watching my video of my story on this car, which maybe I'll pop up along the top actually for you to watch, but I remember watching the video of the Citroen versus the Fiesta ST. It had blue with white racing stripes. Jeremy Clarkson loved it. To me, that was Bible, that it was a great car. I remember thinking, I want that car. So I've been saving up all my money, and eventually I got my Fiesta ST 150. I absolutely loved that car. I could probably go into a lot of detail, but I think you should definitely go and check out my video, which was sort of why I bought this car that I'm in now and my story. But I mean, I'm going to try and not talk forever. I could go into a lot of details, but to summarize, all the mods I did on that car was massive. I had an A4 Word document just from top to bottom with everything on it. So performance-wise, which you might be more interested in, is I did a K&N 57i. I had the 60mm throttle body off, I think it was a Ford Galaxy at the time. Now you're talking, this was back in like 2008, 2009, when these cars were all the rage. Like the Fiesta ST Owners Club forum was just booming, loads of meets, you know, everyone was on it. It's nothing like that now. To me, it's just very dead, that forum. But that's the throttle body people wanted, and yeah, it was off a Galaxy, I think. It had the 200 spec Cosworth cams. It had a full Miltech. It was a resonated manifold exhaust. It had the 4 Evo 2 manifold, sports cat, resonator, back box. It went to Jam Sport. It was remapped, and it got 190 horsepower, and I think it was 166 foot-pounds. So it was a pretty fast car. And the miles per gallon showed. I remember, since having that done and the remap and the cams, yes, it was more powerful, but when I was just travelling back and forth to work, oh my god, I think I struggled to get above mid-20s miles per gallon, which was really bad. But I'd done loads of other stuff. I had one of the first of those cars to have these alloys, which I loved. They were called Revolution Millenniums. You couldn't buy them off the shelf. I had to go to the actual company and ask them to machine a set of 4 for me. I originally had them in white, But the problem is my Mark 6 Fiesta ST was diamond white, so it wasn't that pure bright white, and the wheels were, so I never liked how they stood out. So what I did was I loved the metallic grey that Ford did. It was called Ford Sea Grey, and I did the wheels in it, and then I did all the exterior plastics, and some interior bits were done as well. And they were all done by a guy from the company called Paint Mods, which a lot of you will know as Paint Mods now. But this was a guy who was just on the Fiesta ST Owners Club at the time, and he was able to do this as a service. So I drove up to his place and did a swap over of the plastics, which obviously just doesn't exist now because there's not enough of a market for it. But I was again one of the first to do that. I was actually the first to do Ford Sea Grey gloss plastics on the whole of the outside of one of those cars. Everyone was just doing gloss black, so I loved that. It stood out a little bit differently to everyone else. But yeah, I absolutely loved that car. I can't rate it enough. I absolutely fell in love with it, and I hated after I got rid of it, which is why I'm in this car now. So now moving on to my my sixth car, which is the one I should never have got because I should never have sold me the car. But anyway, it was a Mark 7 Fiesta Gt S 1.6 with 118 horsepower. It was a very nice car. It was an upgrade from the other one in regards to a little bit more refined. It felt a little bit bigger, a bit more mature. It was better for my commuting to work. You know, I was getting much more better miles per gallon, yet it was still a fun car. And at the time, I thought it looked really, really nice. I did quite a few things to it. I remember, I think I lowered it basically on the very first day I got the car. I went to the garage afterwards and I got them to fit lowering springs straight away. Then I did things like a mount tune exhaust. I did this really expensive, it was like 200 quid induction kit. It was like one of those like where it's sort of encased when the bonnet's closed so it keeps it nice and cold. And I remember once I did the induction and the back box, I think that actually added about 10 horsepower. So, you know, I did gain a little chunk of horsepower from the car and it did feel better. And then I did a few other cosmetic things. I did the usual, I did the gloss black plastics, which really did sort of enhance the car. It made the red pop even more, and a few badges here and there and stuff like that. Yeah, it was a really nice car, but I never sort of fell in love with it. And then I remember thinking it just was lacking power. My Fiesta ST 150 with 190 horsepower, just compared to this one with like 120 something, it was lacking. It just wasn't enough power. So then I went for a step down in engine. I went to a 1.4 little turbo Fiat 500 Abarth, or Abarth 500, however you want to say it. Absolutely, now that I did really love that car. It had some right punch to it. It was a fast little car. A very weird seating position. If no one's ever had one, you do feel like you're sat up, but then you get used to it and then you sit in another car and you're like, whoa, this feels low. But I did a few things to that. I didn't really do much to the outside. I lowered it, I put some spacers on it, and that was about it. For the engine though, what I did was I put a TMC tuning box and a BMC air filter. When I then got the car on a rolling road, now to say the standard horsepower on those cars were 135, I think the foot-pounds is very similar. I think it's like, or it might be closer to 150 actually. They're quite talky little cars. But then with the tuning box, I got it to 160 horsepower and 180 foot-pounds. In a little 500, as you can imagine, that was a fast little car and it really did surprise quite a few people. I then accompanied that power with a Magneti Marelli street race exhaust. It had no silencer, no resonator. It was a straight through pipe from the front to back to the two tailpipes, which were slash cut, looked awesome. It sounded absolutely nuts, which I have got a video online of that. I'll maybe just put in a clip now if you haven't heard it. But as much as I loved that car, and the amount of people ahead of me when I was driving down the road used to turn around, just gave me such a buzz and made me laugh. Like, I just put my foot down for a second, this crazy loud noise would come out of the car and people would be looking around thinking, what the hell is making that noise? And they'd probably be looking thinking, there's a little 500? Can't be that. But at the same time, the downfall of that was it was so loud. I was driving to and from work in it, and it was quite deafening inside, and that was inside the car. I hadn't even stripped it, and it was so loud. On a cold start in the morning until it got warmed up, it was so loud. I couldn't stand it. It was getting really annoying. So I actually went back to the standard exhaust, And then sometime after that, I then wanted something like lower, a bit bigger at the time. So I moved on to another car, which, as Jeremy Clarkson says, you're not a true petrol head until you've owned an Alfa. And this is what I did. I went and bought myself an Alfa Romeo. And is it a true Alfa Romeo? Not sure, but it was an Alfa Romeo Mito, which I actually did really, really like. I thought it looked smart, especially when I've done quite a few mods to it. It was a Alfa Romeo Mito Veloce. How cool does that sound, a Veloce? It was the 135 Multi-Air Edition. It came with a few things, you know, it had like aircon, it had the DNA system, so it was a bit more sporty. It had like red brake calipers and nice alloys, etc, etc. But what I did was very similar to the Abarth. I put a TMC tuning box, and that gave it some more power, some more torque. Did I put an air filter on it? I actually can't remember, you know, but I have got a picture anyway, I think, of the engine bay on that car. The most expensive thing I did on that car was I put a Coney shocks suspension on there, which I remember as a set was, I think, £1,000. I've never spent more on one single mod on any car apart from that, which was, I think I bought the car for about 10 grand. So £1,000, I put 10% of the car just on the suspension, which was crazy for me. It was in this gorgeous tornado blue colour. That was its nickname. I used to call it Tornado. And I remember I accompanied it with some, I got rid of the I got rid of the silver headlights and I put in the grey ones, I think from a different model. Smoked the indicators, I tinted all the windows, and I got these Team Dynamic Imolas, 18-inch, so I went from the standard 17 to a bigger 18-inch wheel in matte black. The whole car at that point was looking really mean, especially like at night time. It looked really cool. But shortly before selling the car crashed itself. Now, what I mean by that was I wasn't in the car. I was at this pub and I'd left the car parked up. I was just sat outside having a drink, and then I heard this bang, like a crash, and I was thinking to myself, oh God, someone's had an accident in the car park. And then I heard an alarm, and I remember thinking to myself, I've heard that alarm before. That sounds like my car. Went around the corner and some guy was just like, do you own an Alfa? I was like, yes. And it was like, your car's just crashed into a wall. I was like, no. So went, had a look. Yes, it was basically, the handbrake had failed and it went down and rolled into a corner of this wall at the pub. All of the repair cost on that cost me a lot of money. And in a weird way, it was probably pointless me spending that money because I didn't get it back on the resale, which I did sell the car, I think, less than 6 months later. It was absolutely pointless. But that taught me from that moment onwards, when I'm on an incline or a hill or whatever in a car, to leave it in gear. Yeah, I learnt my lesson that day. So then, after that car, I was like, do you know what? I want more power. I want to get back into a Fiesta, another Fiesta. So I actually went on one of those 2-year, is it PCP, or I can't remember what you call it, but basically it's where you're putting money in, you don't own the car, but you're paying a little bit off every month. Basically what everyone is doing, like nowadays. A lot of young kids are doing it, which I learnt my lesson from this. Personally, don't bother because you're just wasting your money. But anyway, going back to it, I got the Fiesta, the Mark 7 Fiesta ST3, got it in race red, and funnily enough, I actually probably have the least amount to say about that car when I shouldn't, because, you know, it was a nice car. But that's the problem, is it was only ever a nice car. It just felt like something you could have, for me, cruised in. I never went for country drives in it. It never made me excited to drive it. Yes, it was powerful. It had 200 horsepower, 1.6 turbo. It was sort of really good on fuel. It was good at handling. The interior was nice. It was a bit bigger. It was comfortable. But I'm saying all those things. I never thought and looked out the window or on the drive and went, you know what, I want to go for a drive in that car. And I didn't. So that's why, after the 2 years of my ownership, I actually just sold it. I was just like, do you know what? I never fell in love with that car. It wasn't one of these cars like my old Fiesta ST, where whenever I parked it up and I locked the car, I looked back at it. And it's one of those things, isn't it, where people say, you love your car when you're walking away from it, you look back at it. And I didn't. It just wasn't that. It was such a letdown for me. And that's why I have a bit of negativity against the Mark 7s and even the newer Mark 8s. I really don't like the Mark 8s. The engines, the problem is with me is yes, the 1.6 turbos, EcoBoost in those cars are fantastic. The car is fantastic. I wouldn't ever say there's a bad thing about them. It's just, I feel like it lost passion and excitement. Like, what I love about these cars is the normal aspirated 2-litre noise and power delivery you get from them. They're not really fast, they're not dead refined, they're not fuel efficient. But it's like all those things, that's what makes it exciting. So I only did a few little bits and bobs with the Fiesta ST. I think I changed a couple of pipes inside, did the badges. That was about it. That's all I did. Not much else to really say about that car. Then after that, me and my wife, we got into like the finances. I think at the time I'm trying to remember now the dates, but we were getting married or we had been married and we were really low on funds. So as I said, I sold the Fiesta ST3 and we went out and bought a cheap and nasty. It was a Golf. It was a 1.6 FSI. It just did me. The idea was I just wanted this thing to get to and from work, but it had a lot of problems. I mean, even straight away we had to spend too much money on fixing things just to get it sort of road legal. Like the brakes were shot. But the thing is, it was just a constant oil leak. I was having sort of problems in that regards, and then I think it was making weird noises, and when I got quoted it was worth way more than what we spent on the car, so we scrapped it. I think we got like 250 maybe 300 quid for it on a scrap. Yeah, that was it. Then weirdly, I don't know why, but we were trying to think of something we could get for so many £1,000s that we had as a budget, and I was looking and I went back and we went and got another Abarth. I got an Abarth 500 again, but I wanted to think a little bit different. So my other one was white with all the red stripes. This one was just Campovolo grey. Again, what a cool name. The Italians do make cool cars, and I love the sort of language and the names of cars and stuff, but the paint, Campovolo grey, it was really, really nice. It looked cool. We thought it was a really good buy. Then we got it home, started to drive it a little bit more, noticed issues. There was issues with the clutch, the brakes. I think it had been in some sort of accidents. I'd noticed paintwork was looking dodgy, and I could see little bits of rust damage underneath one side, so it's probably all related to probably some sort of accident or damage, or I feel like it could have been in a track day car. It had weird electronics. I don't know what they'd done, so I don't know if it was sound systems or a fancy exhaust or something, you know, when they have the valve, but there was just things that weren't quite right with that car. And then I had issues with battery drain. I was trying everything. Then we found out it was something to do with the Bluetooth system on those cars, and supposedly to do with where you have it and the cost of either repairing, getting a repair one or something like that. That was going to cost him stupid, like 500-600 quid. And then there was other things that was wrong with the car as well. And I mean, I won't go into all the details, but basically it was going to cost us that much money. We were like, what a waste of money. And I wasn't loving the car because we just kept having problems with it. So we were like, right, we're just going to have to sell it. Lockdown had happened and we were like, right, I'm going to end up having my wife's car and then we'll sell the Abarth. We'll then use the money from that, save up and get a family car. So that brings me on to the next one. So after that, I had my wife's car, which actually was a really nice car. We're back in a Mark 7 Fiesta. I've had quite a few Fiestas. Mark 7 Fiesta, 1.4 turbo titanium. It was a really nice car. So being the titanium, it was really nice spec. It was great. We did quite a lot of like long trips in that car up to Scotland, down to Cornwall. And it was so good on fuel. The 1.4, but because of the turbo, it was quite punchy. And it was a really nice dark metallic blue. I did quite a few things to it. During lockdown, when I had a lot more free time, I took all the wheels off. I completely refurbed them. I'll try and find some pictures. I did them, plus plastics on the inside of the car, the wing mirrors. I did them all in like this nice metallic gunmetal metallic sort of grey colour, which looked really nice against the blue. I was doing some spraying of the gloss black plastics. And yeah, I was just sort of giving it a little facelift just because I knew it was going to be my car. Funny thing is, we didn't actually realise that lockdown was going to last that long. I didn't even really get to drive that car. It was on the driveway, having all this work done to it, like me making it my own, and we didn't even really get to drive it in the end. So it was a little bit sad, but it was a very nice car. But what we did was we sold the Abarth, and like I said, the money we got from that, we got our family car, which you might have seen, I've done a little bit on it on YouTube and on my Instagram, was the Kia Sportage GT. It's the 2-litre diesel CRDI or something it's called, with the auto flappy paddle gearbox. It is such a nice car to drive. I honestly can't tell you. It's actually quite sporty. It handles really, really well. Probably one of the best handling cars actually I've owned. It is powerful. It only has 135 horsepower, but it has 275 foot-pounds of torque, which is quite a lot of torque. Now, it is obviously quite a heavy car, but it delivers that power so well. And with the auto gearbox, you can barely feel the changes in the gears, honestly. So when you put your foot down in sport mode in that car, it just keeps going. And before you know it, you've got a brake because you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was at that speed. But yeah, we love that car. I feel like I wouldn't mind even doing a point of view in that car or something just to show you. The interior is really nice for what it is, and the price we got it for is fantastic. The value of that car has actually gone up thousands since we've bought it second hand, which is just mad. But then we end the story with then me now owning this car. We're back in a Mark 6, a 2006 Fiesta ST150, which, as you all know, I absolutely love and adore it. It is priceless. I can't believe I've even had people asking me how much I would offer to sell it for. And I never hear back when I basically say I don't really want to sell it. It's pretty priceless. It'd have to be a lot of money to benefit from me selling it. I really don't want to sell it. I don't want to sell it. I want to keep it forever. I really do. I want it to be a car that once I've done it, it's a full show car. Maybe in the future I've got space to sort of store it and I don't have to drive it all day every day. And I'd love it to be handing down to one of my kids, you know, in the future. That's my plan. So I'm just going to look at the camera. Oh my God, it's been nearly a half-an-hour video. That's before my edits. I'm really sorry everyone that it is a long video, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed finding out my full car history, enjoyed seeing the pictures of some of these cars. I'd love to know what you think of some of them. Have you owned any of those cars in the past? Why don't you comment below with your car history? Just, you know, bullet point them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And after all them, tell me which one is your favourite car. It might not even be your current car. Like, until this car, every car that came after my other Mark 6 might have been nicer, faster, more refined, more expensive. I didn't love them as much. Those two cars are the only ones that I've probably ever really loved. Right everyone, well, really appreciate it. Big thumbs up to you if you have actually sat with your drink, without a drink, and actually watched all of this video. I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen. And like I said, I'd love that interaction of letting me know in the comments below what you think and your car history. So Happy New Year everyone again, and I'm really looking forward to all the mods that I've got coming up. So yeah, see you in the next video. Bye.